Hi, this is Mike Essen, South Florida's conservative voice. We hate higher prices, we hate higher premiums, we hate higher insurance rates. I have a champion of that cause right here with me. His name is Jim Kallinger. He is the chairman of the Small Business and Consumer Alliance. Jim, welcome to the Mike Essen Show.
Hey, Mike, glad to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. The legislature is closing out the session on property taxes next week. Is it possible we could get an opportunity for a new 250,000 homestead exemption for property taxes? Please tell me and my audience that.
Yeah, Mike, so they had a special session that ended recently, and out of the session, they put forth a resolution to lower, or I would say increase our property tax exemption from 50,000 to 250,000 the first year, second year up to 500,000. Now, what that resolution does is it puts the issue on the ballot. So this November, we will have on our ballot a proposed amendment to increase our property tax exemption from 50,000 to 250,000. So if over 60% of us vote for that, in favor of that amendment, then our property taxes, not our property, yeah, our property taxes will come down because our exemption will go up from 50 to 250,000. So we will see a tax break if this amendment passes.
And right now, from the polling you might see, what are the odds you think it'll pass? I mean, if the Swami Jim.
Well, Mike, that's a great question. I mean, everybody wants their taxes to go down. They've done some polling, and I think the latest I saw, up to 64% of those who were polled favor the amendment, saying that they would vote for it. And again, to pass an amendment to get it into the Constitution, the Florida Constitution, it takes 60% plus one. So if the election were held today, if that was on the ballot today, it looks like it would pass. But there's a lot of people that are opposed to it. And we'll see how it plays out. I mean, it's how many months do we have until November? So we'll see what happens. But right now, looks like according to polling, it will pass.
And just to make my audience know, yes means to lower the homestead exemption. Yes is to lower the taxes on the ballot, right?
Yeah, so a yes vote for this amendment would increase our property tax exemption from 50,000 to 250,000. What that means is our taxes would, though they will come down because you have a larger exemption. You can write off more value on your property that gets taxed. So if you write off that value, then your taxes will come down because you're taxed on a lesser value on your property. So you're right. A yes vote would mean that your taxes would come down.
Vote yes, people, on two. It's amendment two. Monday, June 1st, marked the start of the hurricane season. Oh my. That relates to another big affordability issue for Floridians. The price and availability of homeowners insurance is all coming to Florida. Rates have been affected. In some cases, gone down for homeowners in all the insurance they buy. Is this the only place in the country this is happening? Please explain.
So, first we're talking property taxes, now we're talking insurance. And now we're speaking about not only homeowners insurance, but car insurance for your automobile. And we are starting to see those rates come down, which is good news. And that all started, Mike, back in 2023. We had this huge, massive, I would say, historic tort reform or lawsuit reform legislation that passed. So it's been, 2-3 years now, and we're starting to see the fruits of that. So what that legislation, and it was very broad. There were a lot of different moving parts in that legislation that really took to task the abuse of lawsuits that we were seeing here in Florida, and it really eliminated a lot of that. And because of it, we were seeing insurance. So what was happening, Mike, is we had a lot of insurance companies that were leaving Florida, whether it was for your property or for your automobile, um, because they just couldn't. It couldn't be competitive. They were fighting against all the lawsuits that were going on. Now that that's been reformed, we're seeing the insurance companies come back into Florida. Now we have more insurance companies, which means more competition. They're competing with each other. And because of that, we're seeing our rates come down for not only our property, but for our automobile insurance. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense, and I'm very happy to hear that. Regarding the lawsuit reforms you mentioned, it was 2023. People doubted it. 3 years later, lawsuits dropped 23% in 2024, in 2025, 25%. Are the rates directly related to litigation? Please explain yes or no, and why, or why not.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation to that. There's a man, I can't remember the name of the group now that they monitor, lawsuits, really across the country. And I have a statistic here just to give you an idea. This is
Mhm.
before the lawsuit reform legislation. Florida accounted for more than 72% of the nation's homeowner claimed litigation in 2023. So over 72% of claim litigation in 2023, despite Florida only representing 10% of US homeowners claims. So Florida only represented 10% of the claims being filed, but 72% of litigation related to those claims came out of Florida. So it was just disproportionate. In other words, Florida was a haven for lawsuit abuse. And that's what the legislation dealt with. Our legislators, our elected representatives, they heard the people saying, wait, what's going on here? Why are my rates going up with my automobiles and with my homeowners policies? Why are these rates going up? And they figured, well, they did the research and they found out that a major proponent of those rates going up was lawsuit abuse. And so they dealt with it, like I said, back in 2023. And now we're starting to see the fruits of that. And our rates are now going down. We have a more competitive insurance market. And because of that, we're seeing our rates go down. And that's a direct benefit of the lawsuit reform of 2023.
Who needs the Beatles when you have music like that, right?
Yeah.
What will happen if the legislature rolls back the lawsuit reform to 2023?
Well, well, the insurance companies are going to leave like they did, and our rates will go up. I mean, it's that simple. So, it's, and we've all seen the billboard attorneys, go down anywhere you drive, you see billboards, so and so won me, $1 million for this or whatever, $500,000 for that. It became a jackpot. I don't know. It's just like jackpot attorneys, I guess you could call it, where people really were just trying to, get rich quick, and it was being abused. It was a system that was highly abusive, and the thing is, Mike, you and I pay for it. With our rates going up higher, somebody pays for it. And so legislature, again, they address that. And, you know, they did not take away our ability to sue somebody for wrongful doing. Or, if they injured us, we still have that right to, file a lawsuit and sue somebody. It just put some parameters around it. It brought it back down to reality. So we haven't lost the right to, file lawsuits. It just brought reforms in that made it more even and equal. And as a result, we're all seeing the benefits of that in lower insurance rates. So it's a win-win. It's a, I guess the billboard attorneys may not be making as much money, but we're all saving a lot more than we ever have because of what the legislature did. So it's all good stuff. And, Mike, kind of to your question, the billboard attorneys, they lost their gravy train. They're going to try to get it back. And it's going to, take our legislators, take us, our elected representatives, we're going to need to stay in touch with them and make sure that they keep their eye on this because I can guarantee you there's going to be attempts to roll back a lot of the reforms that we saw in 2023. So we have to be vigilant. And that's how the process works. Vigilance means, reaching out to your elected representatives and, staying in touch with them, talking about this stuff and let them know, how you feel about it. And then that's what happened in 2023. But we have to be vigilant because if we don't, that's the way the political process works. Somebody's going to try to get back lost ground, and but we have to be vigilant.
Is there anything else 28 days after the hurricane season and well into we could do to lower the prices of insurance costs, premiums?
Yeah, Mike, and that's more of that. That's a common sense type question. I would say, I mean, I don't know how long you live in Florida, but I've been here, gosh, 45 years or more.
Longer for
And
me, yeah.
and I'll be frank with you. I get complacent, when I hear like, there's a hurricane coming, and it's like, yeah, we hear it every year, and but then like Andrew, then the big one hits, and then it's like, wow, I should have paid more attention. So, if we want to keep our rates low, we have the lawsuit reform. That was all good stuff. Now it comes down to common sense, and we just have to be, wise as homeowners. And I know there's mitigation programs that the state funds, and I'm not sure, where you find that stuff. It's probably on a website somewhere, but mitigation efforts on your home to make it more hurricane proof would be a wise thing to consider. Something as simple as, cutting tree limbs that are hanging over the house that in a heavy wind they might fall and, crash in the house and damage your roof or whatever. So, it comes down to common sense at this point I mean, we're in the hurricane season right now. And, you probably heard they're saying it's going to be a quiet season, but, maybe we don't have as many, but maybe we get a big one that actually hits. And so we got to be ready for it and do everything you can to prepare, make your home as hurricane proof as possible. And if we all do that, when it eventually does come through, there'll be less damage. And when there's less damage, that benefits everybody because the insurance companies, they're not going to have to put out as much for the damages. So, just prepare for hurricanes. When we talk about it a lot, but a lot of us that have been here for many, many years, we sometimes don't heed the warnings. But that's what I would say, Mike, to answer your question. Just use common sense, folks, and just make your home hurricane proof as much as possible, and that's a good thing.
Excellent. I think in order to win your cause, you have to rebut the other side. The other side's argument against lawsuit abuse and tort reform is, what if somebody needs that care their whole life? This is not my position. I agree with you. But if you're debating somebody, I were to say Jim Kallinger, what would you do to somebody who's paralyzed, who needs as much money as possible? Doesn't tort reform hurt that cause? What would your response be to that?
The lawsuit reform did not affect that. If you are harmed, if you are injured from neglect, you're going to recover. This is not. There was abuse in the system, and this is what it addressed abuse. Like I said earlier, this does not take away by any means our ability to file a lawsuit and sue somebody for wrongful injury. That is still there. We have that right. There are abuses in the system that the payout was not going to the plaintiff, it was going to the trial attorney. Like, if I'm a plaintiff in the case, I'm injured and I need money for whatever it might be for an injury, I want that money, not the attorney. And so it took a lot of those abuses out. So, in the end, as plaintiffs, if we're injured, we're seeing more of that claim coming to the plaintiff rather than just to the attorney. So it's just a more level playing field. And those reforms did not do anything to affect us filing and getting those claims that we rightfully deserve.
I'm glad you said that. Tell us about your organization, Small Business Consumer Alliance, please.
Yeah, Mike. So, we advocate for, I mean, you hear the mom and pop business. You have, the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Those are they represent big companies. You have Associated Industries of Florida. They represent the huge corporations. You have NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, and they represent, I would say, like the medium-sized companies. And, we speak for, when I say the mom and pop, I'm talking about, the plumber that works on his own. It's his own company, and his employee is himself. I'm talking mom and pop, small like that. I'm talking about, the sandwich shop on the corner, that a couple runs, and maybe they have a nephew that, runs a counter. I mean, these are very small businesses who have no representation. And, there's a lot of stuff, again, this lawsuit reform, there's a lot of things that may not affect a medium or large size company, but for a small mom and pop, it's devastating. It'll put them out of business. A lot of these issues that potentially get ignored by these bigger organizations that do a great job. Um, but there's these things that happen that, if they don't have an impact on a medium, even a small business, but the mom and pops, we watch out for that type of thing. The things that fall through the cracks, that if they're not addressed, that one thing, if it were to happen, it would put that mom and pop out of business. And, we hate for that to happen. So we speak for them, we advocate for them.
Jim, thank you. Not only thank you so much for coming on the show, I thank you more for the great work you do. Before I ask you about the website of your organization or any choice website of any group you want, is there anything you want to cover that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, well, we have a Facebook page, Small Business and Consumers Alliance. You can go there and you can participate in the conversation on our Facebook page. So we don't have a website, but we operate through a Facebook page.
Jim, thank you so much. And vote yes on two. Thank you, my friend. Take care.
All right, Mike. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
You bet.